Hey guys, welcome back to the last round of the Who Let the Doge Out tournament. And yet again, I have another Infernal Dwarf list. Lucky me. Um, Basically, the pairing for this one, I don't know if I've explained the pairing system properly, but basically, you've got 5 teams, and you send 3 of them over to your opponent, and keep 2 in hand. The 2 in hand, you get to choose the matchup of the 3 that your opponent sends over. So this was the first time that I'd been kept in hand, and pretty much from our discussions with the team, it was because no one wanted to face this Infernal Dwarf list. And I looked at it and basically thought, well, I've played something fairly similar twice already in this tournament. I've got a pretty good idea of what it does and how it's going to play, so I'm more than happy to play against it because I won round 1, it was pretty close, but I thought that I had some good opportunities to actually get more points there, whereas I had less opportunities, I reckon, to lose points, so I felt like probably in the end that matchup was okay for me. And my round 3 game, which I lost big if you've seen that video, spoiler alert, but I still thought that playing that matchup again, with a little bit better luck, I'd be in a much better spot. So I wasn't too concerned about ID being a hard loss or anything after that 20-0. So I was still pretty happy to take this on. Pretty much what he's taken is an Alchemy Master, the Taurukh Commissioner that'll go on the Taurukh bus with the multi-wound weapon, a Vassal Conjurer of Pyro, a block of 20 Citadel Guard with Flintlocks, 2 units of bow and spear Vassal Levies, both with flaming standards, 2 Titan Mortars, a Kadim Chariot, 5 Vassal Cav, and then 2 Citizen Giants with Tower Shields. There's obviously some differences between this and the previous list that I've played, but to me, it seemed like it was going to play in a fairly similar way, which is to say fairly conservatively. And then obviously it's countercharge threat, so with the Chariot, the Taurukh bus, and the Citizen Giant once I get close. It didn't seem to be as tough to get points out of, I think. Because there isn't a Bastion block, and the Vassal Levies are obviously easier than Plate Armor Dwarves to beat once you get into combat. It sort of seemed like it was leaning more heavily on the kill me before I get there part of the Infernal Dwarf plan. So, alright, there was some differences I was a little bit worried about, just given the fact that those giants could be quite troublesome. I often struggle with some single models, and that's got a 3-up armor save, which is going to be annoying for a lot of my smaller units if it gets in. But realistically, I think that I had a pretty good idea of how Luke was going to approach this game, so I was fairly confident that I'd be able to play similarly to how I played the previous matchups, and was hopeful to come away with a win. I took not really enough screenshots for this game, so I think I've got 6 or maybe 7 in total. So I'll do a little bit of extra explaining between shots because I don't have as much detail as I have in previous videos. This one is from after my turn 1. I think after my shooting, so I've done everything for my turn 1, and this is the finish. I didn't do any damage with my shooting or with my magic, it looks like. I killed a few Vassal Cav up the top. So pretty much what happened was my opponent won the roll for sides, chose top, and I dropped everything to go first. My theory was he probably didn't want to be over the left side because the building would get in the way of firing lanes and stuff. So I kind of assumed that he'd go over the side that he did. It's even possible we might have even been playing marching columns or something, like where I saw some of his drops beforehand. In fact, I think that's right. So I think after the 3 drops or whatever we need to do, I saw that he was going to be over on the right hand side, so deployed with that in mind. Basically, setting up my Merc Vets in the middle and my bruisers over on the right hand side, knowing some of the stuff that would be there, but also thinking about the objectives. So, because if my merc vets can get to that middle one and my bruisers can basically sit on that hill, zoning out the one on the right, I've got a building protecting the other one on the left-hand side, so it's going to be a little bit difficult for anything to come and get that one off me. So I feel like I was in a pretty good spot to take the objective, basically. And that was also my theory with putting the bombardiers all over on that left side, because anything that was coming over on the right side of that house, I'd be able to soften up before it came in, and I had the merc vets there to countercharge, and hoping that either my bruisers or one of my bombardiers could actually take that objective and then just move back into the bottom corner. This is after my movement, so I've basically pressed up pretty aggressively. And I mean, that was kind of the theory. I was like, I'm going to grab this middle objective with my merc vets, I think, and then see what he does to deal with that. But I think you'll find that I decided to get aggressive after I had already come up with that plan, because maybe you came up with a good round of shooting. I can't remember why I decided to change my mind, but basically I decided I wanted to try and get more points than just doing a safe play for the objective on my next turn. I think the next picture is a little bit later, so I have to sort of give you an explanation of how things happened. So basically these Vassal Cav up there came roughly down to here, doing a few reforms and stuff along the way, but like that was roughly their max. But it meant that my Onyx was chaffed with because he didn't kill my trappers, so the combination of those two meant that I couldn't charge anything with the Onyx. So in my turn, in the rest of his movement, realistically, not all that much happened. There was these guys shuffled back a little bit. I think the chariot shuffled back a little bit, and then these guys all just sort of these guys in this sort of region all just sort of repositioned. I'll get rid of these for now. But then with where the Vassal Cav went to, which is about here, I sent these guys into their rear, and my theory was, with the rest of my stuff pushing up, once I killed the Vassal Cav, I could actually reform them along. Oh, that's a terrible drawing. But reform them along like that, sort of to chaff his Taurukh Anointed. And yeah, so in my turn 2, after the Vassals here had moved backwards, I'm pretty sure they were 16 inches away from my merc vets, but I decided to take that charge. And part of that theory actually was the fact that if I failed, I'd probably be on the objective, and then nothing really lost in terms of position. But if I get it, I'm in a really dangerous position. And yeah, so this is obviously a little bit later, as you can see. I've had my turn 2 magic, so it's probably roughly at the end of my second turn. I used the dogs as I said I would, so they killed the Vassals, and then they reformed to block the Taurukh Anointed. The bruisers on the right took a few casualties from shooting and the mortars and stuff, and realistically I don't even know if they want to fight that giant, but he was out of their line of sight, so they're just sort of maintaining the idea of threatening anything that wants to come get that objective over on the right hand side. My merc vets blew through the Vassals up here, and then they went. I tried to hold because I think they were. I either tried to hold or I couldn't get out of line of sight with a pivot. So basically, either I failed or I had to, because I didn't want to be combo charged by the chariot and the Taurukh Anointed. But the end result was them getting really close to the board edge, which makes it a little bit more difficult for them to position themselves in the later turns. Over on the left-hand side, I actually really like the position of that giant, as in for my opponent, because I'm worried about it against any one of my units over there. The objective is obviously the important thing that I want those units to do, but I'm investing like 600-ish points of bombardiers, 200 points here, and then 250 here, and he's like a 300-point model that is taking all of that of my army, just because I can't rely on anything else over there to make sure I get that objective. So I think that it's worth it for me to be investing that heavily in making sure I get the left-hand spoils token, but I think it's a really good play by my opponent with the giant playing around with the house just to make it difficult for me over there. Other than that, nothing's really all that significant happening. The Oryx has taken a couple of wounds to shooting. I think he actually might have taken that from the Vassal bow shooting at him, ironically. But yeah, otherwise, this is, I think, looking like a fairly good position for me, mainly because of where the Merc Vets are. So everything else is on edge, but those Merc Vets are going to be a huge problem for him to deal with. There's no way, I don't think, that... if he sent his Taurukh Anointed out over to the left, I probably... I can just turn around and then, face his bunker. I feel like he's in a really difficult spot because I've basically got my best combat unit up into his flank on turn 2. And sometimes he'd have enough chaff or something to sort of redeploy his army and adapt to that, but Infernal Dwarves lack a lot of that lateral mobility, and my opponent only had one chaff unit which was used on turn 1, so I was looking at this thinking I'm in a very strong spot to have a good opportunity to get a lot of points in this game. This is, I think, my turn 3, but before combats and everything. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so basically what's happened is we've kept going with the same sort of stuff over on the left-hand side. His giant looks like it declared a charge because it is so close to the building it must have failed. My plan basically... in fact, the bruisers who are in the ruins, I'm almost certain fled either from terror or just by design, and then rallied my turn. So my bruisers have picked up the objective over there. They're just going to go down to the bottom left-hand corner. And then the small unit of Merc Vets I back in combat against that giant. I think it's probably pretty dicey if he charges me. But if I charge him, I'm strength 7, and I think that I'm a really good shot at winning that combat, basically. Particularly if my Bombardiers can do some wounds with shooting over the next couple of turns, because he obviously can't charge me next turn. So the Chariot up in the north was turned around to sort of threaten my Merc Vets, but I just brought my Kindred on to chaff him. Because he's got flaming and everything, I'm pretty confident that the Kindred is just going to die, whereas normally it's quite hard to deal with, but I was pretty fine with sacrificing that to nullify the Chariot coming in as a counter. I don't think it was a very difficult charge, in terms of distance, but I got my Oryx into the Taurukh Anointed unit, where I was pretty sure he was probably going to sacrifice his champion to me. I only had 3 wounds left, so it was a little bit dicey, but I don't think that the output... So if he put his BSB there, I think that it's quite... it's touch and go whether or not he kills my Oryx, because I think the average is about 2 wounds, just because I halve the multi-wounds. But I'm assuming that it'll chuck his champion because he doesn't want to take the impact hits. Other than that, basically, the bruisers on the right kept doing their normal thing. The Mercs up the top turned around so they can, even if the Oryx dies, be in a good spot to charge the block or the unit of Citadel Guard with his caster. And then I just chaffed the Citadel Guard so they couldn't shoot, or they couldn't countercharge into the Rock Oryx. In fact, there might even be the front there. Maybe I chaffed them because I wanted to send the Frost Mammoth in later on, to the next round of combat, or at least keep that option open. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, because I think they're in the front of the Oryx. Then again, if I blow through the unit, I wouldn't really want them coming into the flank charge. But regardless, I blocked them because I didn't want them to charge. This is end of that turn. So, and yeah, end of my turn. So this is just what's happened, basically, which isn't all that much. I killed the champion on the charge with my Oryx. He's got the Rod of Battle up. And then it looks like I did a wound to the giant over on the left with my shooting. Okay, this is after my opponent's turn. Is it? Yes, yeah, this is after my opponent's turn. So basically, his shooting has done 2 wounds to the Merc Vets. They might have even already taken one to the Vassal Cav. His Chariot did kill the Canada. He did 4 wounds to the Frost Mammoth with his shooting and possibly magic as well. And his giant over on the right is basically just positioned like that so that I can only get 2 models in contact. So I'd have 9 attacks and maybe... I wouldn't actually lose one because he's not going to do 6 wounds. But I'd only have 9 attacks and makes it a little bit more dicey, that combat. In the main combat, that Oryx with the Taurukh, the BSB challenge in the second round. And basically, I think... Yeah, it looks like I only did 2 wounds because I've got 1 left. And I did 2 wounds to him, which I think is roughly average. I mean, I've got 5 strength, 5 poison at AP 6, and he's wouldn't have an armor save to that. He'd have a 5-up ward save. And then I've got 5 battle focus, strength 6 attacks from the mount. So like doing 2 wounds to him, probably pretty reasonable, maybe a little bit short. And I think I've done the maths that said that about 2 wounds is what he should do to me with rerolls to wound, because I'm always assuming that with the Vassal shooting and the Alchemy attribute, I'm not thinking I'm ever not going to be flammable. And he did get... So he got Glory of Gold up, which just... I can't think of what else might have been concerning me. I guess he's got... Oh, he doesn't have his pyro spells anymore. Yeah, look, I'm not sure. I might have just rolled poorly, because I think that is surely the worst one for me to let through. But... Because otherwise he wouldn't have had flaming attacks, he wouldn't have rerolls to wound. But regardless, I ended up living, which was basically a good outcome, because he's locked there for the counter charges you can see coming from the Merc Vets, and the Frost Mammoth can even make a decision. I did, I think, consider going this way, but it was pretty far. The Frost Mammoth only movement 6, so I just wanted to send him into where he was going to be definitely more important. Now, I think this next photo might be missing quite a bit. Yeah, it's a terrible photo. It's got the full screen notification up the top. Yeah, okay, so let's sort of go through what's happened. So yeah, as I said, the Merc Vets up here came in at the flank. I am not sure. I think I could only get 2 models in with the wheel there. I definitely couldn't get the Shaman's rank in. The Frost Mammoth went in to the front and corner clipped there. And basically, with all those attacks, because I mean, even if... I'm pretty sure I only got 2 Merc Vets, but even with only 2 Merc Vets, because the champion's there, that's 11 attacks from the front rank, so it's 17 attacks from the unit. And I would have gotten some magic off, be it +1 to hit, +1 to wound, maybe even -1 to wound me, but it's an enormous amount of attacks, basically, that he would have had to go through. He might have gotten that second guy in. I'm not 100% sure, but that's only 6 attacks from him, I think, coming back at me. I've got parry and a 3-up armor save. And the Frost Mammoth is obviously adding impact hits, strength 6 attacks, strength 4 attacks. There's just a lot going on in there. And I'm pretty sure when it came through in the challenge, I killed the BSB before he struck, so my Rock Oryx even managed to stay alive after that. So basically, that unit broke. There was 1 or 2 models left, and they ran that way. I pursued them, so the Merc Vets went into the War Machine there. The Oryx, I think, pursued just because with 1 wound left, with all the shooting with the countercharge of the Chariot there, it didn't really matter what happened. He was going to die, so I just wanted to make sure I caught the unit. But it turned out I didn't anyway. And I'm pretty sure in the combat, my Frost Mammoth actually died to the attacks from the unit. Other than that, what happens in this next? What have we got? Yeah, okay. So then basically from the overrun, what's the next turn? It's my 5. Yeah, so still more has happened. So basically, once all that's happened, the overrun, I get to kill this, and then in that same, because that's my opponent's turn, he countercharged into the Rock Oryx with the Chariot and killed it. The 2 fleeing Taurukh rallied around about here, and then my Merkvet overrun got them into them as well, which killed them in my turn. The Citadel guard here charged this dog who had distracting from the wall, and then I think he was basically trying to make a push for this objective because I had the one over on the left, but I figured out either on my 4th turn or my 5th turn that basically if I wanted to make sure that I got the left objective and made sure the giant didn't mess with me and screw it up, I needed those Merkvets to stay where they were, which means I could get nothing in to take this center objective. So I had one in hand, and I felt like I had decent options to stop him from getting into the one on the right, just because the Merkvets were bearing down on him. But at the same time, I needed to get rid of the giant, and I wasn't really sure how that was going to go. But I did end up charging the giant down there, and I think over 2 rounds of combat, I just killed him, basically. So he was gone, and I had 5 guys still, I think, left remaining, because he was not rolling to hit very well at all. So the next one... Yeah, okay, so that's basically how it's happened. You can't really see it, but just over the top right-hand corner of this annoying full screen notification is where the Kadim Chariot is. This is on my turn, because actually the dog fighting the Citadel guard, he either lasted 2 rounds of combat or 3, because my opponent I think is 8 wide. No, he's 7 wide. But for whatever reason, I was doing a couple of wounds, or he was doing. He never did any to me, I don't think, until he ended up killing me. But basically, that dog was there for a lot longer than it should have been, and was actually making it really difficult for my opponent to get down on that right-hand objective. The giant over on the left has now taken 5 wounds, as you can see, from the shooting from my bombardiers. I'm pretty sure I failed a longish charge, like a 16 with my Swift Stride Mercs over there. But basically, once that, this is my turn 5, so there was no way that he was going to be able to catch those bombardiers and live to tell the tale. So I had one objective firmly in hand, and the right-hand side, I think I made a fairly significant mistake, but I'm not 100% sure because it's a little bit changed by the fact that those Citadel Guard were held up longer than they should be. So the objective, I think, was around about here. In my turn 5, I picked it up, because after killing the giant, I moved onto it. I picked it up on my turn 5, and I moved as far back as I could, which is roughly where they are, basically. So I think what I probably should have done is turned around and moved down, so I'd be an extra 3 inches, so my frontage might be like there. Because then basically the best that he could do is if he charged me, I would drop the objective. My turn 5, he's still got 1 more turn. Yeah, okay. So I am thinking about this right. So the best he could do is place it around about here, or maybe over here. Like basically, if I was 3 inches further down, he can place it 3 inches from my unit, so it'd be roughly where my unit is now, like the northmost point he could place the objective on. And then, because I've fled the charge, he would have to fail a charge. So he could only go 6 inches, and I think this distance would be more than 6. Greater than 6. which means that on his turn 5 he's not on top of it, so he would he wouldn't be able to pick it up because he needs to be on top of it on turn 6 to pick it up, and then if he gets there on turn 6 it's too late. The only thing that's sort of changing my mind with how I think about that is this dog lasted way longer than he should. So in the end, basically, he denied the Citadel Guard the chance to get it. And I'm just thinking, if he if the dog doesn't die but he flees, these guys could go. That's probably. I'm looking at this thing on the side. That's probably about 12. So, but they could get to a point quite reasonably to like here or say, and then they're probably within range of the objective on my opponent's turn 5 to pick it up. So instead, I sat my bruises there and figured I might be able to win the combat because you're not that good. It's a depending on what happens with those Citadel Guard, it's probably a longish charge, depending on how far they go. What ended up happening was that the dog held them up so they didn't even get the chance. But the Vassal Levy against the Bruisers, I sort of thought, this is alright. I've got 15 strength 6 attack, 16 in fact, but he strikes before me, so we might kill a guy. I forgot that he had flaming banners, so I was sort of thinking I just need to stop Glory of Gold to stop him from getting rerolls to wound. But in fact, because he had a flaming banner, I should have stopped Word of Iron, and I didn't. But basically, the only other important thing that happened in the game was the fact that these guys came in and then just beat the tar out of me. Like I think I've got it on the next slide. They were just dead completely, and the Vassal Cav holding the objective to win. Which, as I said, is a little bit more complicated than I thought. Like, when I was thinking about this game and not looking at the pictures, it was a little bit more complicated protecting that objective than my memory was telling me. But I'm pretty sure if I had taken more time and sort of mapped out all the possible moves on like the turn 4 when I got on top of the objective, or at least on the turn 5 when I was trying to avoid... I was happy to lose the bruises if it meant that he didn't get the objective. So I think I could have figured that out better. But my opponent and I were playing like the game was really good and really quick. We weren't really sitting there spending ages on mapping out possible moves and finding the exact optimum solution. So I'm not really unhappy that I didn't take the time. But I do think that was a mistake. I think I made the wrong decision keeping the bruises there, even if the alternatives weren't a perfect choice. Otherwise, on the board, you can see that basically he's got his Citadel Guard are fine, his Chariot's fine. His Giant over on the left-hand side has taken 6 wounds, so I'm getting half points for that. He might even be fleeing, and we just didn't worry about it, like turning him around or whatever. The Vassal Cav up the top has been fleeing for like 4 turns, never rallied, and I got full points for him in the end. And in fact, you can see my dog that fought the Citadel Guard never took a wound. Against all those Strength 5 attacks, never took a wound. Just broke from combat. Which still should have happened earlier, because he still had 2 ranks and a banner. So even if he's fluffing on his attacks, I should have been running before that. But I ended up saying, so the dog only gave up 40 of his 80 points. The end result of the game was a 12-8 to me, which, I mean, I'm pretty happy with. It was a fun, close game, but I do just think if I'd done better with the objective over on the right, there might have been a bit of chance that I could deny him getting that, and then my fleeing bruises might rally on turn 6, and I'd even save their points for like a 16-4 win, maybe even 17-3. I think I could have done better over there, basically, was my only lament after the game. But it was good because I think my opponent's probably a bit unhappy that I made the 16-inch charge with my Merc Vets, for obvious reasons. I mean, like, having the Merc Vets up here on turn 2 when his whole army was here was probably pretty annoying for him. But, I mean, a 10 on 2 dice isn't overly likely, but I've had it happen many times against me, so I think he'd probably be looking back and wishing he'd found a way not to give me the option for that charge instead. If I hadn't made the charge, I think the game would probably have been less full of action, basically, because I think realistically, if I fail, I just pick up that middle objective and then move away, try and keep my expensive stuff alive, and then just go like, I've got the objective. I don't really have enough good targets for you to take down. You're shooting short range and I'm faster than you, so I think that in the end I probably would have had a same-ish result if I hadn't made it in. Yeah, I probably lose small on points, but then win the objective, so 11-9 win or a 12-8 win I think would be pretty reasonable if I hadn't made that charge. So in the end I think it all balanced out anyway. That was the last game for the tournament. I do have another one coming up which I might do battle reports for, we'll see, but otherwise I hope you've enjoyed this one, and there's definitely going to be some more to come, so stay tuned for that. Thanks guys.